Well, as I mentioned earlier today, Attorney General Merrick Garland testified before the House Judiciary Committee following his defiance of a congressional subpoena for the audio recordings of President Biden's testimony to Special Counsel Robert Hur. Now, this comes as evidence continues to build that the Department of Justice, under the Attorney General, has pursued a two-tiered system of justice that targets political opponents. What did we learn from today's hearing? Joining me now to discuss this is Congresswoman Harriet Hageman. She is a member of the House Judiciary Committee and the Select Subcommittee on the Weaponization of the Federal Government. She represents Wyoming's at-large congressional district. Congresswoman Hageman, welcome back to Washington Watch. Always great to see you.
Good to see you, Tony.
So your assessment of the Attorney General's appearance today before the committee?
Stonewalled, not interested in actually sharing information, has no interest in assisting us with our congressional and constitutional responsibility of oversight, did everything he could to deflect answering the questions, and it was for him 5 or 6 hours of just simply saying, I can't answer that, I don't know. That's something that we're investigating, and as a result, we didn't learn, I guess, what we should be entitled to learn, which is to what extent he's been engaged and involved with things like the Fani Willis prosecution in Georgia and the catastrophe that just recently happened in New York with the conviction of President Trump.
So I watched a good part of the hearing today, and my take is we're left with more questions than we gained in terms of answers.
I think that that's legitimate. My line of questioning focused on some information that Jim Jordan, Congressman Jim Jordan, and I have been addressing over the last couple of months. We have learned that the IRS and the Department of Justice have been using AI to actually access the bank records of American citizens. And so I wanted to follow up with Merrick Garland related to that today. And what I really focused on was he first of all admitted that to the extent that they were using AI without probable cause and without a search warrant, it would most likely violate the Fourth Amendment. He also promised that he would get us a more definitive answer as to whether the DOJ and IRS is in fact using AI and to what extent that they are. So that's something that we will continue to follow up with him on. The other issue that I addressed, and then I immediately went to another hearing. I would encourage your watchers to go look at what happened in the Oversight Committee today with Natural Resources, and that is that the international drug cartels have moved in on our Indian reservations, and it's been absolutely devastating for our tribal members. So I focused on that with Merrick Garland in terms of the relationship between the open border and the open border policies and what that is doing to our tribal members, and it's been totally catastrophic. The three individuals that testified in the Oversight Committee with Natural Resources says this is the worst that it's ever been in terms of the open border, and the violence, the human trafficking, and the drug smuggling is absolutely off the charts as a result. So I tried to hold Merrick Garland accountable for the open border and for refusing to actually try to protect our tribes and tribal members in that regard. But again, he just simply tried to deflect attention and blame Congress or anything else that he could.
I want to go back to the Department of Justice's use of AI to track the financial transactions of Americans. Did he give any indication as to why they might be doing this?
Well, there has been someone, it was an undercover video, and it was a gentleman who worked for the IRS. And the reason he said that the IRS and DOJ were doing this was to access our bank records to make sure that we're paying all of the taxes that we're required to pay. And what he focused on were lower income people in our middle class, saying those are the ones that are being targeted with AI so that they can assess and access and monitor our spending habits and our income habits, our incomes, so that they know whether we're paying our taxes. So that would be the purpose of using AI to access our bank records. So Jim Jordan and I have sent a letter. We received a very non-satisfying response, and we're asking Mr. Garland to provide additional information to describe to what extent AI is being used to violate our Fourth Amendment rights.
Harriet, I want to ask you a question. You said that as he stonewalls or he doesn't answer questions, and I want our viewers and listeners to understand that when a question is asked, and oftentimes it said, well, I don't have that information, you can contact my office or we will get back with you. That rarely, if ever, happens. Am I correct? That
What
follow
we do
up?
is we follow up, but keep in mind the way that they process their responses to us are not designed. The letters that we receive in response are not necessarily designed to get us the information or to be held accountable for the decisions they're made. It is to deflect attention and to use the word again, stonewall. This is one of the reasons why the deep state really is congruous with the unelected bureaucrats in Washington, D.C. What you have is these agencies that are staffed with people who do not believe that Congress should have any oversight what they do at all. And we're really moving to a system where we are being governed by an unelected bureaucracy rather than being the republic that we are with a representative form of government. And this is part of that battle that we have is as Congress attempts to hold these administrative agencies accountable, their first response is, how do we avoid being held accountable by Congress?
Right.
That's why I do think it's critically important that we start using the power of the purse much more than we do. And in fact, I think when these agencies come in, we find a way to cut their budget by 10, 20, 30, 40% if they won't answer questions.
Yeah, I think that is extremely important because Americans need to understand that the Congress does have oversight, has a responsibility, the check and the balance, but this is it, these oversight hearings, because they do not answer the questions in the letters. And so when you have them before a committee, that is your constitutional duty to make sure that they are doing what is within the dictates and the parameters of their departments. You have, in this case, the Attorney General who is refusing to comply with a subpoena, not a request, not a question, but a subpoena in terms of you're asking for information that will help you do your job. I mean, what's next?
And he is doing that at the same time that he claims that he's apolitical and that he is not being controlled or he doesn't receive these marching orders from the White House. The very thing that he is withholding from Congress is the audio tape of the interview that Special Counsel Hur had with the President of the United States. And keep in mind, this was the interview that resulted in Hur's decision not to prosecute President Biden for withholding classified documents because he essentially said he is not competent to stand trial. Yet this is the leader of the free world. They will not allow us, and they have been withholding the audio tape of that interview because I know that they must recognize that the transcript of Joe Biden was bad enough that just reading the words on the paper. I'm sure his hesitancy and his mannerisms and his repeating himself and the number of times that he had to have a question repeated to him, I think that it demonstrates that he really is incompetent and is suffering from some pretty severe dementia. And that's what they're trying to withhold, not only from the Judiciary Committee, but keep in mind, I just represent 560,000 people in the state of Wyoming. They're keeping this information from the citizens, from the voting public. Right. They are trying to prevent us from being able to show how actually incompetent Joe Biden is at this point.
You know, Congresswoman, to your point about the budget being really the only tool Congress has, it'd be great to see legislation passed that would cut a 10, 20% from any department in which the head is held in contempt of Congress, so that you don't have to wait till the next budget year, but it would be triggered within that budget year. We're out of time. Harriet, always great to see you. Thanks so much for taking time to join us today.
Thank you, Tony.